Alright, let's do it. Let's talk about the school shootings epidemic in America. Take a look at the trend. The Columbine massacre was committed by a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old. Virginia Tech, a 23-year-old. Sandy Hook, a 20-year-old. Now in Florida, another 19-year-old. First of all, we can't just settle for calling someone's behavior crazy, deranged, senseless, evil. If you want to understand a behavior that repeats itself in different individuals in different places, you cannot separate an individual from the culture that surrounds them. Today's America is probably the most individualistic and competitive society in the world. When it comes to these young Americans who are committing these school shootings, you have to understand the stressors that surround the American youth, their unique insecurities and their emotional fragility. Just by being teenagers, they are already under huge stress to prove themselves to their peers, do all kinds of things to be popular. All the while, their developing minds are making sense of themselves and the world around them. On top of that, you have a competitive mentality that permeates the schools, that permeates social media, and it manifests in dangerous and hostile ways such as bullying, social exclusion. So many teenagers today are diagnosed with some form of ADHD or depression or anxiety. And the kind of mind-altering medications that they take don't actually solve their problem. They only alleviate symptoms, many times at the cost of dangerous side effects, such as numbing their emotion to the external world or mentally disconnecting them from real life. Add to that the obscene levels of violence that American kids are being exposed to on a regular basis. By the time they're 18, typical American kids are exposed to 200,000 acts of violence, 16,000 of which are murders, and that's just television. Couple that with what they see online, on social media, when they go to the movies, and the violent video games they play, and what you have is kids that are becoming desensitized to horrible levels of violence. So, when you consider the impact of all of the above on developing minds who may also be struggling with difficult life circumstances, a broken family, no connection with their parents, perhaps they're adopted, maybe they experience violence at home, and then you stop for a moment and think, is it really unimaginable that some of them may snap and break and erupt in horrible violence? Wake up, America. When people feel like their life isn't necessarily worth living, their senseless acts only reflect the worst that their culture has taught them. This is why, even with tougher gun laws standing in the way of these unstable young Americans, you won't be solving the problem. In fact, they could think about even more horrible ways to commit mass murder. And with the internet at their fingertips, you don't want to think about what that may be. The way to treat such a social epidemic is only to treat the root cause, which is the deep social and cultural conditioning that breeds these events in the first place. You need a massive educational program to reinfuse American kids with new norms, values, examples. They need to feel each other and build social sensitivity towards each other, build trust, build support. They need to go through their day doing collaborative projects and discussions and workshops and team building activities. Kids have to grow up in an environment that is safe and positive and prevents hostile competition from building up in the first place. School has to feel like a warm, familial community rather than a place where you go to fight for individual success while being anxious about social acceptance. Our education today must focus on cultivating the human being within these young people. They need to get the tools and guidance to find their expression, to realize their potential, to make sense of themselves and the world around them, to forge meaningful and healthy connections with their peers. This kind of social training should become the main thing that they do in school and the main thing that they're evaluated by at school. Their social sensibilities should be the initial qualification they get in order to participate in adult society. Now, in parallel to that, mainstream media channels should be required to dedicate some percentage of their activity to support this educational effort, allowing media producers to make money at the account of filling your kids' brains with horrible visualizations of blood and gore and murder is free speech. Honestly, if you want to heal a culture that breeds violence, you gotta treat it at the root.